When New Jersey voted to permit gambling casinos in Atlantic City, state officials talked confidently of being able to keep organized crime off Atlantic City's famous boardwalk. But criminals began early trying to muscle in, and there was bloodshed. Stephen Fraser's report tonight is on the difficulty the state has had in trying to keep the racketeers away.
Atlantic City, June 1977. New Jersey Governor Brendan Byrne signed a law paving the way for casinos. Byrne told the mob to stay away.
Keep your filthy hands out of Atlantic City. Keep the hell out of our state.
But organized crime didn't. State police say the mob is increasingly active in Atlantic City. They say the fight for control of illegal activity here has grown into the biggest gangland war since the days of Chicago's Al Capone. So far, there's no evidence that the casinos themselves have been infiltrated. But authorities say unions with ties to organized crime are trying to organize casino security guards and have already organized hotel and restaurant workers and roofers.
So if organized crime comes in and controls the unions, they have a stranglehold around the casino.
Police say the mob is also involved in businesses that provide the casinos with parking, food, liquor, and vending machines.
You could have the cleanest casino in the world, managed by a staff from St. Patrick's Cathedral. But if they had to buy their cigarette machines from organized crime, then organized crime would have a hold on a casino.
The concern is that given a foothold inside the casinos, the mob could expand its influence to shake down the owners for some of the millions of dollars made on the casino floor. The high stakes have prompted a struggle between organized crime families in Philadelphia and New York. March 1980, Philadelphia mob boss Angelo Bruno was shot as he sat in his car. The murder is still under investigation, but the Justice Department has filed papers in court reporting that 3 different informants say this man ordered the murder, Frank Thierry. He is described by the Justice Department as the most powerful mob boss in New York. Thierry, weakened by a recent illness, denies responsibility for the Bruno murder. But New Jersey police say Bruno's successor tried to make peace with Thierry's people.
The new head of the Bruno crime family came to this street in New York City to talk with the Gambino and Genovese families about sharing control of Atlantic City.
The peace talks failed. 5 more men were executed before year's end, including an Atlantic City union leader with ties to organized crime. 11 days ago, Bruno's successor was killed. Philip Testa, the Philadelphian whom police said tried to make peace, died as a bomb destroyed his home. Police say the current mob boss in Atlantic City is still a Philadelphian, Nick Scarfo, and they say his life could be in jeopardy from the New York mob.
If I was Nicholas Scarfo, I certainly wouldn't start to read a long novel unless I was a speed reader.
Interest in Atlantic City is not confined to East Coast crime families. State police say a lot of real estate in the city's run-down neighborhoods is being bought by mobsters from Toronto who are laundering underworld money from other parts of the world.
At one time we made some kind of a trace, and I think we came up with 62 parcels of property that they had purchased in the Atlantic County and Atlantic City area.
So underworld activity in Atlantic City grows, despite Governor Byrne's warning and despite a major effort by New Jersey to fight it. The state passed the toughest casino control act in the world. It spends $20 million a year and uses 700 people to keep the casinos clean. The mob might not control casinos, but it has them under siege.
They come at us from all sides every day.
Stephen Fraser, NBC News, Atlantic City.
And as Charles Murphy reports, in one large city, mob murders are becoming almost routine.
In this business, there's only one law you gotta follow to keep out of trouble. Do it first, do it yourself, and keep on doing it.
That was Hollywood, but in the last couple of years, it could have been Philadelphia. 16 members of the Philadelphia underworld have been killed in a gangland civil war. Angelo Bruno, head of the family, killed by a shotgun blast. Phil Chicken Man Testa, Bruno's successor, blown up on his front porch. Rocco Marinucci, suspected of blowing up Testa, shot 9 times, firecrackers stuffed in his mouth. Frank Narducci, prominent Bruno family member, shot 10 times.
I don't think this country has seen anything like what Philadelphia is seeing since the days of Prohibition since the days when Al Capone was in charge of the Chicago family.
And this in the city of William Penn, the Quaker who chose for it a name that means brotherly love.
They certainly don't seem to have any brotherly love between each other. Just a lot of brutality and a lot of murder.
Between 1959 and 1980, when Angelo Bruno allegedly ran the family from this South Philly row house, there were no killings. He was the classic godfather.
He was a nice guy, okay? He was great.
Police think younger family members who wanted to make more money faster got impatient and got rid of Bruno, and that started the string of killings.
Although most of the killings have taken place in Philadelphia, this is what they're fighting for, the big money along this boardwalk.
Casinos came to Atlantic City, only 50 miles from Philadelphia, in 1978. Last year, the 9 casinos here grossed $1.1 billion, half the take of Nevada's 200. The lure of that big money has drawn organized crime to Atlantic City. A former member of the Philadelphia family, his identity concealed, recently told a U.S. Senate committee what Atlantic City means to his old associates.
Did they ever mention a figure of how much money they expected to make?
Nobody knew the exact figure, but it had to be a hell of a lot, Senator, because everybody put up $500,000 apiece.
New Jersey tries hard to keep the underworld out of the casinos, but officials suspect the mob has muscled its way into some of the construction contracts that have changed the look of this old resort. Law enforcement officials say mob-run companies have also tried to take over the business of supplying hotels with food and beverages.
The New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement has tied Local 54, which represents 10,000 hotel and casino workers, to organized crime. The union denies the connection.
With a casino that is grossing upwards to, and sometimes over $1 million a day during the busy season, there's quite a bit of leverage there that a corrupt union could possibly improperly invoke against a casino operation.
Law enforcement officials say this man, Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo, has effectively run Local 54 for a number of years, and that this power has helped him take over the Philadelphia crime family. Some say he has also been helped by a New York City crime family.
Everybody in the street knows that if you take on Little Nicky and you're successful in taking him out, killing him, that you're going to have the Genovese family to contend with. That's one heck of an insurance policy.
Until recently, Scarfo lived at his mother's boarding house in Atlantic City. He professes to be a patriot who loves his country and its Constitution. He took the Fifth Amendment 32 times at a recent state hearing.
Mr. Scarfo, what do you do for a living?
I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
Scarfo had been out on bail pending an appeal of a gun possession conviction, but last week his bail was revoked and he's now in federal prison. But it's expected the violence in Philadelphia will continue.
I think there's going to be a lot more killings before it finally does stop in Philadelphia.
There's too much at stake in Philadelphia and Atlantic City, and the people fighting for it are very greedy. Charles Murphy, ABC News, Atlantic City.
In Philadelphia today, what appears to be a gang rubout is the latest fallout from an organized crime trial. A court case featuring a mob assassin turned government informant and secret surveillance tapes with blood-curdling threats. Peter Van Sant has the Philadelphia story and the tapes.
Bullets through the door, blood on the seat. Assassins in South Philadelphia this morning shot and killed Billy Vesey, the brother of a mob hitman who was supposed to testify today in the trial of Philly's alleged mob boss, John Stanfa.
They knew where he was. They went up to the car, multiple shots fired, and they knew what their target was, and they hit it.
Vesey is the latest casualty in a Philadelphia mob war that is a throwback to Chicago of the 1930s. Since 1991, police say there have been 9 gangland hits, killing 5 mobsters. Today, a third Vesey brother promised more bloodshed.
One of my plans to find out who did it and kill them.
John Vesey was scheduled to take the stand this morning to finger his former boss and 7 of his associates. Vesey turned against John Stanfa after he was targeted for murder.
The case against John Stanfa includes 3 murders, murder conspiracy, kidnapping, extortion, and loan sharking. The most damning evidence comes from Stanfa's own words, secretly tape recorded by the FBI, including this chilling threat spoken in Italian.
Stanfa and cohort Sergio Battaglia were covertly videotaped entering a meeting where the FBI says they coolly discussed using acid to kill. Stanfa's attorney today denied his client had anything to do with this morning's murder. Whoever did the killing has failed to intimidate the star witness. Sources say John Vesey plans to testify. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Philadelphia.
In focus this week, the sound of gunfire on the streets of Philadelphia. It is not the kind of street violence that other cities are grappling with. Rather, it's gangsters killing gangsters, as organized crime factions have declared all-out war.
Along with the World Series, there's another battle being watched in Philadelphia. It's the latest mob war. 8 shootings so far this year, and the normally peaceful streets of South Philadelphia are bracing for more violence.
Mob wars have been a fact of urban life in America's cities for decades. What's different about this one, though, is that the battlefield has changed. The shootings have been out in the open, public places, like the South Philadelphia landmark, the Melrose Diner.
In the most recent killing, reputed organized crime associate Frank Baldino was executed in the parking lot of the Melrose while the restaurant was crowded with dinner patrons. The car belonging to these people was sprayed with gunfire.
It was like 5 minutes. I was going to be done. I was going to be in the car. You know, I had my mother, my grandmother, and her in the back seat, you know.
I got a little bit scared. I would have been sitting in the back seat.
In the old days, you wouldn't see a hit like that in Philadelphia.
Frank Wallace grew up here in South Philadelphia and went on to run the police department's organized crime unit.
The first opportunity they had, whack. They whacked them in front of, could be, 50 witnesses, 100 witnesses, and they showed a total disregard for the people that they live with down here.
And it's that disregard for innocent bystanders that has Philadelphia police so concerned. Gunmen recently tried to kill this man, Sicilian-born Frank Stanfa, who law enforcement officials call the head of the Philadelphia mob, by machine gunning his car on a city freeway during the morning rush hour. Stanfa escaped, but his son was critically injured. The authorities believe that Stanfa seized power after the conviction of mob boss Little Nicky Scarfo.
That vacuum has since been filled by Stanfa. However, there's a reluctance on, and we use the word Young Turks, of some of the Young Turks to respect Stanfa and his position at the head of organized crime.
Those Young Turks are, according to police, led by 31-year-old Joseph Skinny Joe Merlino. After the attempt on Stanfa's life, Merlino and Michael Chicky Cinglini were ambushed outside their Greenpeace social club. Merlino was wounded. Cinglini died.
I mean, they say this is a great job. I want to do this for a living. Little do they realize they can also do it for a dying.
The stakes in this war, not just the revenues from gambling, loan sharking, and drugs in Philadelphia, but a piece of the action in Atlantic City, New Jersey, an hour and a half south. With all that at stake, officials expect even more killings.
They don't follow their own set of rules, and their own set of rules is that they're involved in criminality 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They view you and I as squares because we work for a living. They're parasites on society.
2 grand juries have convened looking into the Philadelphia, southern New Jersey mob, and indictments are expected. But history in Philadelphia has a way of repeating itself.
Based on past history, what will happen is they'll continue to whack each other back and forth until the government finally comes down with their indictments. There'll be a whole slew of indictments. They'll all get arrested. They'll pack them off to jail. And then 2-3 years from now, they'll start all over again.
Philadelphia police say until they get the kingpins thereafter, all they can do is make life miserable for the mobsters. That includes pulling them over to spot check their cars and cracking down on things like sports betting. Crime and violence in this country will be among the topics discussed on NBC's Meet the Press tomorrow morning. The guest this week, Attorney General Janet Reno.
There is a bloody war going on in Philadelphia for control of organized crime. Today, the U.S. government tried to put a stop to it by indicting 24 alleged mobsters and hauling them in. Correspondent Richard Threlkeld has this Philadelphia takeover story.
As takeover bids go, this is about as unfriendly as you can get. In the past year, there have been at least 9 shootings and 5 dead on the streets of South Philadelphia in the war for mastery of the local underworld. Everything was quiet until the Philadelphia godfather, Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo, was sent off to prison for 69 years. Ever since, there's been a blood feud between Scarfo's alleged successor, John Stanfa, and some so-called young Turks led by Joseph Skinny Joey Merlino, who was wounded in one of the shootings. Today, the government said enough.
These indictments make clear that we can and will protect society from dangerous, sophisticated criminal organizations.
A federal grand jury's indicted Stanfa and 23 others, and early today, FBI agents arrested most of them. They're charged with racketeering, conspiracy, and murder. The government's basing its case on evidence from mobsters turned stool pigeons. Mobsters certainly aren't what they used to be.
The fact that people within the mob feel free to break their oath of silence, the fact that the bonds that tie them together are no longer honor and kinship and respect, but are power and greed, all of that is spelling the demise of the mob.
Authorities say the recent bloodshed is evidence of just how weak and divided the Philadelphia mob is just now. Odd as it may seem, the time to worry about mobsters is when they're not shooting at each other. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, New York.